Welcome to another edition of the Open Book, Open Mind Challenge. And as you know, for those of you who have not seen the show, we focus on the books and the literature that inspire us, whether it be things that make us laugh, whether things that make us cry, whether things that can just get us excited and want to go and take on the world. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to another friend of mine, a guest here, and his name is David, just like me. Welcome him to the program.
Hey, David.
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
Well, thank you for doing this with me. I appreciate you coming all the way here and taking the Open Book, Open Mind Challenge. What kind of books do you read?
A lot of them. Like there's this 19th century guy who led the Algerian resistance against France. Islamic religious leader of his time, a political figure.
Wow.
A religious thinker, and just getting the different perspectives on his life. So I'm reading books on him, books by him, and that's another case where I'm going back into the archives of the New York Times, like in the 1860s, reading articles about how he was perceived. His name was Ibn al-Qadir.
Okay.
And he was sort of part of the educated religious cultural leadership at the time France started trying to colonize Algeria, and he really resisted that colonization. And for some in the United States, he was a hero at the time. He was a big deal because he was fighting European imperialism.
Wow.
He was fighting for national independence, and Americans at the time really could relate to that.
Right.
In fact, there was a town in Iowa in the 1840s that was named for him.
Okay.
He also seemed to have, in his jihad, he had a morality about how you went about fighting that was remarkable even for today. And even though the French really tried to portray him as a savage, I think he conducted the warfare in a much more civilized fashion than did the French, who started a scorched earth policy and were burning villages and fields and crops in order to starve the resistance.
Très sauvage, indeed, as the French would say. Now, I'm so, like, just now, you just gave me an idea of so many things that now I'm interested about this guy, and this is why I like doing this, and this is why I like doing this with you, and especially with guests, because the types of books that we're reading, I mean, it's something that you get excited about. And as I always say, when you're excited about something, the first thing you do is you tell someone you know, your good friend, and hey, this is what I just did today. This is what I just found out today. And this is a way that we can do this with others and let them know, hey, there's something out there that you might really enjoy in this book or in this text. And I'm now interested in that.
And he was a profoundly well-read man and very curious. I mean, he was learning in his interaction with Christianity, he learned a great deal. He learned to have a lot of respect for other religions. And actually, during some riots, he was said to have saved 10,000 Christians.
Wow.
Which had Abraham Lincoln and the Pope and all kinds of Vatican, all kinds of other people giving him awards. But he wrote at one point, I mean, he was very devout, very religious, but he was also very open. And at one point, I wish I could remember the exact words, he said basically, what the Christian thinks of God, what the Jew thinks of God, what the Muslim thinks of God, he says, they're all true, but they're only part of it. He is everything you think, everything the different traditions think of him, God and more.
Wow.
I don't even know if he used the word him, which of course would be up for debate now in terms of God, but it seems to me that he took that attitude, I don't own God, like Abraham Lincoln, I don't claim God is on my side, I pray that I am on God's side.
It's beautiful.
You know, and that a whole lot of self-righteous conflict and violence. Not all of it, but some of it could be reduced if we thought, I don't own the truth, I try to serve it.
Absolutely remarkable. So when did you first hear about this gentleman or this book or his writings? Did you learn about that growing up, or did you learn that as an adult?
I learned about him as an adult. I mean, I'd been interested in the history of North Africa the Arab lands and their impact with European colonialism. But as an individual person, it was a couple years ago I came across just an interesting thing that this guy was considered by a lot to be a initiated Sufi religious teacher in a long line of many, many Sufi masters. He was a warrior, a diplomat, that he could be very devout, but he could be engaged with really cosmopolitan people like Sir Richard Burton and other figures like that. And I think, I felt for a long time that we totally underplay what's come into the Western tradition from other sources.
Right.
And that whole intellect, that you actually narrow and distort it just to think of it as a Western. That was stuff coming from North Africa, from Central Africa, from Asia, these ideas were mixing for thousands of years.
What do you think, because I know you're very involved in different areas. You're a lecturer. What kind of literature do you offer to your students?
One of the courses I teach every fall is developmental psychopathology. We talk about people with mental illnesses.
Okay.
And, another writer like Harry Stack Sullivan who said, everyone is more human than otherwise.
Really?
Right.
Right.
And we have these, and when people talk about mental illness, they start talking about these terms as if somebody with a mental illness is a different kind of thing.
I see.
Like, this person is a schizophrenic.
So they're not human.
Not a person with schizophrenia.
Wow.
Schizophrenic, that's their identity.
Wow.
And we can teach these classes as if these are sort of strange and exotic beings, people with different disorders. And one wonderful thing about the internet is that you can bring up the faces and voices of the people who live with those diagnoses.
So how would you, perfect example, so how would you, or what advice would you give, or what book would you recommend, if there is one? How would you teach someone to now, I guess, engage or converse with someone in that situation where you're trying to show them that people are people and not people are not their diagnosis?
Well, one figure I really like in that regard is Temple Grandin. Okay. Temple Grandin was a woman who was diagnosed very early on with very severe autism. She's written books, some of them with some help. I don't know, I think more recently not with so much help. And she lived in a very different world than most of us. But she's obviously brilliant. And she really makes a wonderful case both in how she's lived her own life, but also in what she says, for the fact that different kinds of minds, we need different kinds of minds that work differently, that cognitive diversity is an asset. So, I mean, there's some diagnoses that we can really say this is a disorder.
Cognitive diversity.
People who think differently. So we talk about the autism spectrum.
Wow.
There are people in the autism spectrum who notice things that a lot of other people don't.
We'll never see.
And speaking from that perspective, she can also explain what different things feel like. The fact that for a lot of people with that diagnosis, the flickering of a fluorescent light is irritating. So there's great digital resources where she's given TED Talks or other talks, news stories. There's a wonderful biographical movie starring Claire Danes, who does a wonderful job of channeling her. Temple Grandin, and she's written wonderful books both on what it's like to live with autism and try to understand how other people think. She, almost like an anthropologist, she says, studying and learning. She said she was about 30 and in graduate school when she learned that the facial expressions people make meant something. It wasn't just like noise.
Wow. So, okay, if you had, obviously you have several great recommendations. If you had to bring maybe 3 books with you to the North Pole, whether you read them or not, or planning to read them, what would you be excited about taking with you in your survival pack?
For my own benefit.
Because I'm really interested in your subject, your choice.
How long am I going to be on the North Pole?
That's a good question. Let's say about a week.
About a week. I guess it would depend on my mood. If I knew today that I had to go, I'd probably bring the Quran and the Upanishads.
Wow.
Because I've only read those piecemeal.
So you need more than a week. We'd extend your visit. We'd extend
Well, it depends
your
on
stay.
what else I had to do during the week.
Well, then let's give you an all-access, like a paid vacation to the North Pole. You have 3 weeks. You have the Quran. What else?
The Upanishads, some of the Hindu sacred texts, which, again, you can't read them all.
No.
Or there's no way I'll read them all in my lifetime, but some of them.
So now, just based on everything you just told me, the books that you read, the selection that you take with you to the North Pole, I'm kind of understanding a little bit. I've known you for a good while, but I'm seeing in the selection of books that you chose that you're very much connected with books and literature that are for betterment, not just like self-help books, but understanding culture, understanding society, understanding your place in this world, your connection with the divine. I mean, I'm laying on a lot, but it feels like all of those different books touch on every one of those aspects, as the gumbo would.
Yeah, actually, that's close. That when you were talking about a source of inspiration, there's one quote, and I'm sure I'm not going to give it exactly, but that I've pondered off and on the last 10 years. And it's by William James, who's a psychologist in the area, right?
Okay.
Over in Cambridge. And he said, I am done with great things and great ambitions.
Wow.
Massive deeds. I am for those tiny, loving, warm human interactions that, like the smallest rivulets of water over time, will render even the greatest monuments of pride.
Oh my, that was amazing.
Yeah, just human kindness, human connection.
Wow.
And that, I guess also, in my last, well, that was a time around 15 years ago, I was really humbled by the kindness and generosity of other people towards me. And I think that, and even maybe some of the barriers I put up between myself and other people. Right? So that, like, I knew if somebody, by society's terms, was damaged or wounded or injured or disabled, I knew to be basically warm or sympathetic. But I think on some level inside, I was seeing a separation. And maybe not even just distance, maybe, to be really honest with myself, putting myself a little bit above them. Like, they're a poor thing. Not everyone who talks about helping those less fortunate puts that emphasis on the word less. But there's still that separation and barrier. Maybe also we don't want to see how vulnerable we are. And I had a time I was badly injured, not in good control over my body, where I was a poor thing. And I saw from other people with injuries and disabilities the power, the strength, the kindness, the warmth, the connection they showed me in offering me support. Which at the time, maybe also because I was, quite emotionally vulnerable, definitely, literally moved me to tears on several occasions. Yeah, I would say maybe, there was a time, when I was a teen or preteen, that books were a refuge from other people or from the whole social thing. I think now, generally, I look for books that take me towards people. I guess the first books I remember having great fun with was one that was really simple, maybe a sentence or two on a typical page and lots of pictures, called The Silly Book.
The Silly Book?
By Stu Hempel, who spelled Stu, S-T-O-O. And he just sort of made fun and played with the kind of things parents are saying to kids and what kids' routines was, and like,
I like it.
To say, brush your bed and go right to teeth. Or
I do that all the time. And my kids look at me and they go home, they go back to bed and they cracking up. But I love to do it. Like, I don't do it on purpose, but I trip over myself. And I let that go sometimes. I don't hold on to it too much.
But I think it kind of made fun of all the stuff as, I don't know, a 4-year-old that
Yeah.
like that was getting thrown at me. But yeah, it taught me about the value of humor. I think humor is totally underappreciated as a resource.
Wow.
It's certainly helped me in the toughest times I've ever had, and I've told people humor is not a fair weather friend. Humor makes it more fun when things are good, but when things are really bad, humor's
there as well.
Humor's there.
Humor's
helped me through.
Humor has the sense of irony as well, and I think it does take us out of ourselves to kind of be able to laugh at certain pain sometimes.
Yeah. And a very supposedly heavy philosopher that I engaged with and argued with when I was in high school, Friedrich Nietzsche, said, a bad joke is better than no joke.
Nice, I like it.
And there are times when, any joke will do in a storm.
In a tense situation, it gets you out of a lot of, precarious situations, and I can appreciate that. I only have one question. Would you ever consider writing a book, or have you? You have a lot of...
I've started to think about writing some stories.
You would? Okay, and if you do, I would definitely want you to come back on this program and let us know when it's available, because I'm sure it'd be a great story or series. I'm sure it'd probably be a chronicle of different tales. And I would love to see that at some point, but no pressure. You and I always have these great conversations. But
and what about you? You going to start writing?
I've thought about it, and it just happens when I can. There's times that I've woken up in the middle of the night, and I've run to the desk and just started writing. And I one time wrote 3 chapters of something that was going on in my head, and I woke up to write it. So when it comes to writing as a discipline, I've not been able to focus my energy to that. But I have been inspired a few times to put things together on paper or in a song and things of that nature.
Yeah, I should have asked if you were going to start publishing, not start writing.
No, I mean,
you've been writing.
I've written, but not like for not yet. Not in that sense. Not in that volume. Not in that spaces yet. Not in a disciplined way. But as you know, I've written. I write, but I don't know how to put it. But I'd love to at some point. if I ever get the opportunity to put things together.
Well, I look forward to that.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming, and I know you've come a long way from down the street, and I'm excited to continue this conversation with you online, and anyone who's watched this program and has some kind of feedback or input or some way that you've wanted to describe the things that you've been feeling when you read, please reach out and let us know what you've been reading. Also, drop a comment here on this site if you feel that anything that we've spoken about is interesting to you, that you want to talk more about. So, we are here talking to a good friend of mine, David Vogel, and he is now officially a champion of the Open Book, Open Mind Challenge, that he's taking it here with us today. And the next time, hopefully, we'll be hearing from you and the stories that you've been reading. So, I'd like to let you all know that you can find this online through YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And we'll see you next time on the Open Book, Open Mind Challenge.